Right, good morning. Apologies if the voice is a bit croaky. I hope it holds up during the presentation. Basically what I want to talk about today, for those that you're not aware of land securities, a little bit about land securities, what adds value to buildings and how sustainability makes a difference to that. Sustainable buildings that we've developed, and also our approach going forward, trying to improve performance with our own definition of ultra-low carbon buildings. So land securities provides buildings and services to occupiers across the UK. We provide people with the ability to have a positive impact in what they do in their everyday work and processes that they carry out. And in our shopping centres, there's probably 300 million people a year pass through our doors. We were founded just towards the end of the Second World War. At the moment, we have a portfolio value of £14.6 billion, and our focus is on London offices and retail properties, both in and around London and around the UK. The split of our portfolio is roughly equal between London and those properties held outside of London. You may be familiar with some of our properties. In central London, One New Change near to St Paul's, Cardinal Place in Victoria, and perhaps most famously the building with the Piccadilly lights on. We own that and the lights. I think the lights probably generate more revenue than the building does. And on the retail side, we have retail assets right across the UK. Our most recent acquisition was to buy the managing share in Blue Water in Kent, which I guess many of you will be familiar with. We've developed shopping centres right across the UK. We're a vertically integrated business, so we're involved in what we call the property cycle, which is buying buildings, and you need to be aware of their performance going forward. So you have to understand the sustainability criteria involved in those buildings. We develop buildings to improve them or to replace them. We manage those buildings, as was mentioned earlier, going forward, which is very important. And if we sell an asset, we hope it's with an added value from where it began with us. So where does sustainability fit in the process? This is our Chief Executive, Rob Knowles' interpretation that we need to have a licence to operate our business. And if we don't behave in the right way, in a responsible way, people won't want to do business with us. I think we've all seen the example when people get it wrong. A recent example of VW is probably a case in point, but there have been many others in the past. If you lose that credibility, it impacts your business. So a portfolio that has both positive social and environmental impact is a portfolio that we want to have and we want to maintain going forward. Initially, that's all about doing things efficiently and effectively, which we all understand, and being transparent and open about what we do. But going forward, it's more about repositioning the company, making sure that our products are what our customers want, and creating new value going forward, and meeting unmet needs. And all of those things hopefully contribute to us being a sustainable company. And our strategy creates value by understanding what our businesses that want to do business with us or look for from our buildings. We want to be the developer of choice, the property supplier of choice. In the process, we want to have a positive impact on the community and support the world that supports us and create much better environments in the places that we do business, because it's about creating places, not just buildings. So part of that responsibility is helping people into work, and we've had a big focus on that with our current development programme that really kicked in probably about 2010-11. And we've been investing a lot of time and energy in making sure that we do the best we can to help people into work. We've got a community employment programme, and that's provided match funding to the funding that's available within the local community and from the local authorities, and we've had over 950 people through the process gaining qualifications and created apprenticeships with people who are working very closely with our supply chain partners. Our process is about continuous improvement and setting stretching targets for ourselves. So we try, when we're developing buildings, to design ahead of legislation. And you'll see why later as I explain, going forward, that long-term value in buildings. It's about reducing energy use, it's about impacting on waste and being aware of our impacts on the natural environment. We're the first company in the UK property sector to really have an internal energy management function, probably nearly 40 years ago now. We published an environmental report, I think the first FTSE UK property company that did that. and we're certified to both ISO 14001 and quite recently we've gained accreditation to 50001. It's important that what we do is recognised externally, because obviously people make choices when they invest in companies. We want them to invest in our company. So we do engage in a lot of benchmarking processes, and we usually score pretty well on those things because the way we do business we feel is the right way. We have a structured approach to doing business in terms of embedding sustainable thinking within the business. The leadership comes right from the main board. Our chief executive chairs our internal environmental social responsibility strategy committee, and we take those priorities down into the business through our targeting and actually work closely with wider stakeholders within the business to take that message forward. Some measures just here show how we're trying to work both within the business and externally in terms of meeting criteria going forward. Employment strategy, we've worked with a lot of people to actually make that work, and as I said, it's paid dividends as we've gone through. So what about value? What is value actually created from in property terms? Well, this is the RICS definition. So a market value of an asset, a property, is really what somebody is willing to pay for it and how they actually transact, understanding what they're buying, what the seller's selling. So the market value of commercial property is primarily driven by its capital value, which is all about where it is, its desirability in the marketplace, and the supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand and less supply, then prices increase, values increase. And in terms of the investment value of the property, it's about the income stream that it creates from a business like ours. And the importance behind that is how long that income stream will last, the length of the lease, and how likely the actual customer that we're engaged with is going to be able to commit to that full term and pay their way going forward. So all those things factor into the value of a property. And driving commercial success is about getting that return on the investment, attracting occupiers willing to enter into a long-term relationship with us, minimising the time the building stands empty, and avoiding that building falling in value over time because it's overtaken by new buildings or refurbished buildings coming into its marketplace. So how does sustainability fit into that equation? Well, first off, there's a lot of regulational requirements, particularly coming to us from the EU, that we have to respond to. But if we can reduce the operational costs in buildings, we can reduce the cost of occupancy. Potentially that means people are more attracted to our buildings, will pay higher rents, that increases the value. We've got our own corporate responsibility aspirations that I touched on earlier. We want to be seen as a responsible business, and we can add value to those assets if we ensure that they last the test of time going forward. Now, we talked about the market value, and people talk about, well, is there a premium for a building being classified as sustainable or green? Or maybe it's, some people look at it slightly differently. There's a market value for a building, but if it doesn't live up to its credentials and expectation, then likelihood it will be suffering a discount to its value. So unless occupiers really understand the value of green buildings and take them, it won't help to drive forward investment in buildings by developers known as like ourselves. So it's a key thing that works between both supplier and provider and customer, that everybody has to think about their businesses in a sustainable way going forward. And we hope that making sure that our buildings are attractive to those type of occupiers, we're working with the best companies going forward, and that fulfills all those other aspects I talked about earlier. And obviously, if we can keep a property up to date and working well into the future, we will reduce any loss of value over time. And it's just a graphical representation of that, if you like. If you don't continue to reinvest and spend time and energy ensuring your buildings are working well and that they're working in an efficient way, then they're going to reduce in value. Realising that sustainable values, well, I think sustainable energy efficient buildings are now becoming the benchmark standard in the marketplace. Basically, if you've got an unsustainable, inefficient building, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to let it. And if you do, you're going to have to discount the rent, which reduces its value. So all of those things are really helping to drive sustainable thinking within businesses like ours, although I have to say I think we were already on that journey for a long time in terms of the way that our values work as a responsible business. And again, just trying to sort of illustrate here, as you reinvest in a building, as you reposition it, whether you retrofitting or refurbishing that building, you're maintaining its value going forward. Talk a little bit about new buildings now and our approach to creating new buildings that have been taken into our portfolio. It's about following a process of a lean, clean, green sort of hierarchy where you start with minimising the energy consumption, maximising its efficiency, trying to link it to community schemes that provide low carbon energy sources or on-site CHP. And then finally trying to add some element of renewable energy to the building where it works and where it's appropriate. And there's lots of different renewable technologies that you can apply, and I'll touch on some of these that we've actually used in some of our new buildings going forward. I mentioned Wandjin Change earlier. This is a building right next to St Paul's. Hopefully many of you may have seen the building. It's a BREEAM Excellent building, which I'm sure BRE are pleased about our long-term commitment to BREEAM, and we use it as a tool to drive consistent performance across our design teams. But actually, the sustainability aspects of this scheme are hidden below ground. It has a ground source energy system. So effectively, we have two connections with the ground, one with the groundwater through an open loop boreholes that draw water from London's aquifer up into the building. And then also we circulate water through the building foundations to create an opportunity to take energy from the ground, which we convert using heat pumps to provide heating and cooling in the building. There's a lot of other sustainable features in the building, from green roofs, water recycling, energy metering, high-performance facades. We work closely with our builders to create those opportunities for jobs, and we really transformed that part of London, creating a new shopping destination. 62 Buckingham Gate, a building in London's Victoria. This building has a CHP system. Sometimes it's not the big things though that you can do. Sometimes it's the small things. I don't know if you noticed the light feature that's in the entrance hall there. Effectively, it's a big orb with an LED light in the middle of it. But that orb is a piece of art, and it's made out of 10,000 recycled spectacle glasses. And it's a fantastic piece of art when you see it, and it shimmers as you walk past it. So if you ever get the chance and you're in Victoria Street, pop your head in the entrance, have a little look. So CHP, I'm sure you're all familiar with this technology, but it's about making sure that you generate on site to reduce the losses from importing mains electricity to site primarily, and using the heat that's produced as a waste product of that process within the building to either heat directly or to create cooling through an absorption chiller. When we look at which technology to use, we look at the buildings and which matches the building profile. This is a building we did a number of years ago that's a residential building, and one of the larger energy uses in that type of building is hot water for washing purposes rather than heating, because buildings are more and more energy efficient. This actually contains some student accommodation as well. So what we went for there was some solar thermal panels to create lots of hot water. So despite, contrary to popular belief, I believe students sometimes do have a shower or take a bath, and hopefully they do with some renewable energy providing that for them. So 20 Fenchurch Street, major iconic building in the City of London, a BREEAM Excellent building, the first building that we started to use LED lighting on the floors. But perhaps the thing that people get drawn to is the fact that we've used a different type of CHP technology. We've used a fuel cell in that building to provide electricity and the byproduct of heat, which we use for heating and hot water, but we can also convert to cooling using an absorption chiller. Same principle, there's an engine-driven CHP, but actually using a chemical process with almost no pollutants produced in the process, and a machine that's effectively almost silent. So a great technology to use in a building context. A technology that is expensive at the moment, but hopefully over time, as more and more people use this type of technology, we'll see its costs come down, because I think as we look further into the future, a future based on hydrogen rather than the fossil fuels that we use at the moment is one that I'm sure will happen in time. But 20 Fenchurch Street isn't all about the fuel cell and the LED lights. I talked about creating places, and there was a very small footprint at ground level. So part of what we gave back to the city was a fantastic public space at the top of the building. And if you ever get the chance, please go up there. It's free to go up. You can book online. You can even take a chance and see if you can get in when you call past, if they're not fully booked. There are a couple of restaurants up there, some fantastic views of the city, but creating a public space for the community that we work with. This building, just about coming to completion. We're hoping to get PC later this week. The Zigzag building, we've got a website called The Thoughtful Building that is worth having a look at. So it talks to you about the type of thinking and technology and design that's gone into creating that building, which includes embedded slab cooling, roof-mounted PV, and another BREEAM excellent building. The scale, I think I talked about community heating schemes. Well, we're creating a very large development at the moment right next to Victoria Station that will finish later next year. And we have a number of buildings on the site, so that effectively enabled us to have an energy centre that serves the 5 buildings that are going to be built on that site. 3 are under construction now, and I say will be finished later next year, and then hopefully the next 2 will start soon afterwards. But we've sized our CHP engines on that site such that we have capacity to be able to export heat that we can't use. We can always use the electricity, but the heat is always a challenge in commercial buildings. But there is a district energy scheme in Pimlico, and we're in discussions with Westminster County Council to link their scheme to ours so that we can give our waste heat to Pimlico and they can use it in their system to serve a wider area with their district network, helping to create a wider integrated network for Westminster. We've created 2 new buildings in the city next to the old Bailey, and again, using the same sort of technology I talked about before, the CHP, PV on the roof, another BREEAM excellent building, and pretty much fully let, which for us is what creates the value. At the end of the day, people have got to be attracted to our buildings and want to take them, and we need to create the right buildings to meet their business requirements. But it's not just about offices. We have the same approach when we're developing shopping centres. The most recent shopping centre we developed was Trinity Leeds. We've got a covered mall there, but it's not a conditioned mall, it's naturally ventilated. We've got solar thermal panels that provide hot water to the utility services within the building. And we've got a BREEAM excellent rating on that shopping centre development with a condenser water loop that helps the retailers utilise recirculated energy between them and improve their performance by encouraging them to use heat pumps. So what about refurbishment? It's not all about new buildings. There's an opportunity to extend the life of buildings, which obviously sustainability perspective is a good thing to do. And as we go forward and buildings get more and more efficient, the amount of energy and carbon that they consume during their lifetime becomes a much smaller proportion when they become more and more energy efficient compared to the energy and carbon that's used to create the buildings in the first place. So as we create more and more efficient buildings, we need to start also to focus on how we can minimise the amount of materials and energy that we're using to create those buildings in the first place. So there's a building that we did a number of years ago now, Queen Gate, which was quite an old tired building. We installed chilled beams, we opened the space up and created a modern workplace. We transformed a series of buildings in Eastbourne Terrace, and we're doing the last one of 4 buildings on that site at the moment. And a building here that looks like a brand new building, but actually it's just a reincarnation of a building that was built probably 40, 50 years ago. And our latest major refurbishment project was in Victoria Street, 123 Victoria Street. There's a building that we don't own that looks very similar to this that hasn't been refurbished, so you can actually see the before and after of the one that we've done and the one owned by another developer that's not yet refurbished their building, the difference you can make. And again, that building's fully let. The government sort of set a challenge going forward. We've all seen the government change its aspirations and direction, but basically, I think the EU is still looking for energy-efficient buildings, low-energy buildings from about 2019-20 onwards. In the absence of a sort of definition of what that really meant, we created our own, which we called ultra-low carbon buildings, where we tried to target a major reduction in the carbon and energy used in both creating and operating those buildings through their life. And our definitions based around reduction in regulated emissions, going forward to at least 50% in energy efficiency terms and 50% going forward, also being aware that the grid itself will be decarbonised as we go forward. But whole life carbon is also important in new building developments because, as I said, as buildings become more and more efficient, you need to focus more and more on the material, energy and carbon that's used to create the buildings themselves. So we've started to study that in our recent developments so we can understand that, and we've now started to set ourselves targets to reduce embodied carbon in any new buildings that we create. And the latest major project that we started is our Oxford Westgate shopping centre scheme. And there we work very closely to meet the aspirations of the local authority, which were very high, and to use that new thinking and what we could do with looking at the embedded carbon as part of the equation to show through life, we could create for them a really exceptional building in the middle of Oxford. Where it's a joint venture with Crown Estates. We're the development lead on the project. And this was the strategy that we took to Oxford. They were very happy with that. We got planning. So our licence to operate comes from our responsible approach and the way that we apply our thinking both to new buildings, operating buildings and refurbishing buildings. So shaping the future for good is what we're trying to do. It's about making buildings that are sustainable because that makes good business sense from our perspective. It's about working with the communities that those buildings are set within to ensure we create better places. And by doing that and working with a social conscience and trying to help people into work, the buildings themselves creating opportunities for people to get jobs or to enjoy a better place to live or to shop or to enjoy their leisure time, we can actually help fuel that local economy that contributes to the UK's economy. And it's about understanding that we really understand where sustainability fits with us as a business. We're absolutely clear on what sustainability does for us, the people, and the purpose is to provide the right space for our customers and communities, helping businesses to succeed, the economy to grow, and people to thrive. We are the biggest listed UK property company, real estate investment trust, but it's not about being the biggest. Our vision is to be the best property company in the UK. And to do that, and if we achieve that, we will be a sustainable business going forward, creating sustainable buildings for our customers to use. Thank you.